if a bubble's not filled in correctly, the person counting the vote on the machine is allowed to adjudicate at the person's will. You can click and select any vote you want. It's been shown.
No, the electronic adjudication thing, those weren't even installed in Georgia.
Yes, they were.
No, they weren't. They weren't.
Yes.
They literally were not. If you want to see more content like this, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Rinyald. And if you disagree with anything in the video, make sure you join the Discord and we can have a chat sometime.
Okay, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, outstanding. So I disagree with you. I don't believe Trump is terrible. Just like I don't believe any other president has been terrible. I think presidents have terrible moments, but I'm 38. I voted for Trump. I live in Illinois.
Okay. Do you want to give a case as to why you don't think so? Do you want me to give my case as to why I do think so?
Oh, go ahead and take your case. As long as you don't divulge into how can you not feel this way that I feel, I'm going to be okay with anything you got.
Well, I guess we'll see, all right? Because there's some things that Trump supporters feel that I can't comprehend, so I guess we'll see. So, okay. I think Donald Trump, I value a lot of the values that started this country, right? I value due process rights. I think it's good to limit the amount of unilateral power that the government has. I think federalism in that regard is good. I think having like a weaker executive where we have like more bureaucratic systems in order to inform the president in making good decisions rather than just having him run amok over the country and swing the federal government like a sword. That's probably not great. I think Donald Trump is very clearly a unitary executive. I don't think he would ever disagree with that. He said that, he has an Article 2 ability to do whatever the hell he wants. And I think that kind of illustrates the way that he views the presidency. I think that, he tried to steal an election. And I think that the voters were very hesitant to hold him actually accountable for it, which I think is really, really scary because Donald Trump basically tried to steal an election and he faced absolutely zero consequences for it, which is pretty bad. I think that he doesn't value a lot of the constitutional rights that we have. We've seen him attacking the First Amendment. We've seen him attacking your 14th Amendment rights, trying to revoke birthright citizenship. And on top of that, he's just like super divisive. I don't think that he's I don't think he's acting as a president for the left. I think he's acting as a president to attack the left. I think that's most of his platform. He's done a couple decent things. That's fine. But I mean, like even policy wise, like the Big Beautiful Bill, like contradicted a lot of the values that he claimed to espouse, right? He wanted to balance the budget, and then he passed a giant spending bill. He talks about how nuclear may be a good direction, but he cut a bunch of nuclear subsidies and gave them to oil companies. And he's also just like a fucking liar, right? Like he came out and he was making statements about medical science without having seen the studies, like literally admittedly saying that he doesn't need to see the studies because he tells it how it is. He's a climate change denier. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff.
Okay, going through that you gave me to a question. Well, I do agree with you on the back end about some of the dumbass things that he's done. Not so much on the beginning because I don't really think that he's any more authoritarian than any other president before him. Hang on, weed eat guy. 1 second.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
He's not going to go away, so it's going to be a minute. Go ahead and go on with your point. You're fine.
You're good. I mean, just in regard to him being more authoritarian, I mean, like almost in name, like the theory of governance that he espouses is unitary executive theory. The idea that, like the 3-letter agencies are serving as an unconstitutional check to his power and that you should just centralize that power into the presidency. I think that's really, really scary. And I think that, whenever we have, a country that runs on weaponizing the DOJ and then turns out Donald Trump does the exact same shit worse, that's pretty bad. I think unitary executive theory is really, really bad. I can't think of an example of like more blatant abuse of power as the president as trying to steal an election, like trying to force the vice president to break federal law on January 6th to count your electors. It's pretty bad.
I understand that. I think the false elector slate is something that has been sorted out in court, and it's another thing that just shows that they were looking for every option. Like,
well, the problem is that I don't think it played out in court. I think that Donald Trump escaped all like legal legibility or legal accountability for that because the people voted him back in before it could go to trial. That's the problem.
Then those kinds of cases, those kinds of precedents, I think we need to have our legislative branch go ahead and make laws to push cases that are of substantive to the forefront. Like the Supreme Court should have just heard that. We should have had it done quickly, but we don't live in that kind of a society, and that's nothing but ifs, ands, and candy bars.
Well, you can only appeal decisions up if they've already been decided, right? So the only reason that the only way that we could have the Supreme Court decide on that is if the courts had already decided on it. Like SCOTUS isn't there to rehear evidence and make a verdict. They're here to, um, for appeals. They're there to appeal your verdict or talk about the constitutionality of that verdict. So the SCOTUS wouldn't have any real jurisdiction here. But the fact is that he was facing the indictment for trying to steal this election, and the people voted him back in, despite the fact that he was,
So you're
facing
specifically
that
talking about
indictment.
the revocation GA.
I'm talking about the Jack Smith case.
So that would have been in DC.
Yep.
Okay. So that case, I think they got to a point where discovery they didn't have enough, and I think there's other things to it because I do believe Jack Smith broke the law multiple times.
Well, I mean, at the very least, we know that it wasn't discovery that was holding that back, right? We have all of the evidence from Jack Smith in regard to the motion that he filed for immunity. We know that all of the evidence was there. It wasn't dropped on the grounds that there wasn't enough evidence to prosecute, because that's the indictment process. You indict. It gets found that you have probable cause to go to trial. That's what the indictment process is for. So he wouldn't have gotten an indictment if it didn't look like the evidence was there. The problem is that the DOJ has a precedence of not, or a policy of not prosecuting sitting presidents, right? So whenever he won the presidency, whenever the people voted him back in office, the DOJ dropped the charges.
I agree with you, but at the same time, in the past, it has been said that a grand jury could get a ham
Indict a
sandwich
ham
indicted.
sandwich,
Yeah,
yeah.
yep. And that's exactly what's happened with Letitia James, and that's exactly what happened with James Comey. But the only difference is they're blue people who got indicted in very liberal districts.
Sure, and I'll let those indictments play out however they play out. Like, I'm not one to call weaponization whenever they can secure a grand jury indictment. I mean, I think it's probably a little weaker than any of the cases that we saw otherwise, but I'm not going to call weaponization. I'm not going to call foul on that yet. But the problem is that we not only do we have like the indictment, we have all of the evidence that the prosecutors had, by extension of the Jack Smith report, by extension of the motion for immunity that he submitted after Trump v. U.S. We know all of the basically all there is to know about the prosecution here, and I think the evidence is super 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 clear. Like, I mean, like, it doesn't get more clear than them telling, Mike Pence, hey, could you like do a minor violation of the Electoral Count Act to steal the election, right?
I understand that. Just consider me dumb.
Mhm.
Could you tell me what the the immunity motion he put in was? Could you just elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, so once the initial indictment was put up, Donald Trump appealed up to the Supreme Court saying that, I should be immune from acts that I took as president. The decision came down that core acts, as outlined in the Constitution, are fully immune, that there's other more cursory powers that are allocated through the Constitution that are presumptively immune, that you need to make the case to the judge as to what should and shouldn't be immune in those cases of presumptive immunity, and then non-official acts don't have immunity. So what Jack Smith did is he went to the judge in that case and he filed basically a motion with all of the evidence that he had in regard to that prosecution. And he said, hey, judge, can you go through this and can you look at what is immune from prosecution and what isn't?
Okay. Did she come back with multitude of things?
Um, I don't even think it got that far. I don't know if there was a decision on that ruling. I know for a fact that the Supreme Court explicitly took out all of the stuff with the DOJ letter. But I don't know if there was ever a ruling on what was presumptively immune and what wasn't. I don't think it ever got that far because Donald Trump was voted in.
Okay, no worries. I'll take you at your word, and I'm not gonna fight on that. I like
Mhm.
now if those are things are the case, I can agree that that's probably looks bad for him. But I think in a true court of law, once everything got out, once the messages and all that stuff got to the jury, and they were able to understand what happened, I believe that just like President Obama doing his things where he did the I don't know what the language would be, but he used drones to do things around the
Yeah, the
world.
drone strikes. Yeah.
There were cases brought up about how that was not a presidential act because of the fact
Hmm.
that they went after citizens and other things like that. And so I think that, like I was saying, I think that every president has those cases that could be brought up where they violate.
Sure, but the two differences is that one, those charges weren't like I'm pretty sure Obama went to all of his principal officers and said, "Hey, this is okay for me to do." Right? It wasn't just an action that the president took, period, and that's it. You know, it was
Well,
something that was done in collaboration with the rest of the federal government. Whereas Donald Trump was working against the rest of the federal government while he was doing the electors. Like the DOJ was telling him at every step that they hadn't found any evidence. The DHS came out and said that this was the most secure election that has ever taken place. Like all of the state investigators came out and said, "Hey, there's no evidence of fraud here." All of his, like legal advisors, he had to end up firing because they were telling him that he couldn't do this. Mike Pence's legal advisors kept contradicting contradicting the plot that they were giving him. The only people that were really working with Donald Trump right now were the lawyers that he handpicked to go along with him, like John Eastman and Rudy Giuliani, who ended up getting, disbarred. So
okay. Do you believe that? Do you think that there's any chance that there was some kind of impropriety during the 2020 election at all?
um if there is a chance, it's like so negligible that it's not worth pointing out. It's probably like a
Okay.
0.001%.
Uh, so
I mean,
there
so
were
just to be clear though, I mean, like there's obviously impropriety in that like people will commit voter fraud. That happens, right? But on a scale that it would change any of the results at any scale at all, that wouldn't be immediately sussed out by all of the audits and the investigations that took place. I think it's pretty unlikely.
Do you know about the case in Wisconsin where the uh, civic clerk, she's a city clerk, printed off multiple, something to the tune of, I might be wrong, it could be 600, it could be 6,000.
Mm-hmm.
She printed off more than 6,000 ballots and was able to get them through, and they were counted in the election, and she didn't get charged until afterward, and she's spending like 6 or 8 months in state prison over it.
I would have to look at the charge. If you give me a case, I'll look it up and read it. But my guess is going to be that even if they were counted on the day of the election, there's a reason that all of these investigations and audits were happening after. So my guess of that actually getting counted and certified on December 12th is pretty low.
No, I agree
But
with you. I
if you
think
give me a case to look up, I
it's going
can.
to be not Green Bay. She was in Milwaukee. She was a civic. She was a clerk of some kind, and she did something with either military or absentee ballots, where she printed off excess, and I believe it was the tune of 600 or 6,000. Uh, but she, or maybe it was less than that. But she did it to the point where she got indicted for it under the Biden administration,
Okay,
or
okay.
it
An
just came
investigation
out in the
concluded
transition.
that Madison former city clerk Claire
Hmm.
Vaugh broke election laws by failing to report and count almost 200 absentee ballots discovered after the 2024 election. Oh, no, that's
That
2024. Okay.
so there's things that are happening all over the country, but I just with the just simply the fact that the basic vote totals kind of return to 2016 status as far there's basically 15 million voters between both parties that are not being able to be seen. I believe that the mail-in ballots were an issue, and I think that they were misused in some places.
Sure, but the problem is that the conviction that you're giving that there may be some problem with the procedures that we use mail-ins for, right? Are you alleging like any sort of outcome determinative fraud here?
I believe in some states, but because there was something like Trump affiliated people brought something like 65 cases, and
62,
of
yeah.
the
One came
yeah,
back good in Pennsylvania.
no, no, of the 60, so well, you're going to pinpoint me even more. Of the 62, all 61 prior to that were uh, dismissed on latches or standing,
Mhm.
meaning you didn't file it early enough, or it's too late, it's over with.
No, not quite. So I mean, like things will also get dismissed on standing if there's no achievable remedy. So like if you're suing on the grounds of like 200 ballots and you're asking for the governor to decertify the election, which is a lot of the cases here, like you're not that's gonna get dismissed on standing too because you have no achievable remedy. Or I think there's some evidentiary grounds that you can like
I agree with you.
there's not even enough grounds to bring a case. I'm pretty sure sometimes that will get dismissed on standing. Like if you have one affidavit saying that one person saw two votes get miscounted, you're probably not going to have standing to bring a case in that situation either. I'm pretty sure that was a lot of the cases, or a lot of the reason why a lot of these cases got dismissed is because I know for a fact one of the times they had somebody in Georgia trying to sue somebody in Pennsylvania, I think, or maybe the other way around, and they were like, "Well, this isn't your election, right? The states run their election.
Oh,
Somebody in
and I
Georgia
can
doesn't
agree
have
that
standing to sue in Pennsylvania, right? So that's
I
why a
can
lot
agree
of
that
these
there's
cases
some
got
of those
dismissed.
things. Well, I think when you talk specifically about Pennsylvania, um, in their own state constitution, election changes have to be done
Hmm.
the through the Constitution. So there has to be a majority vote, like a two
Yep.
thirds vote or whatever. And it was not followed, and I guarantee we'll
Well,
never see the end
the
on that
reason
stuff.
that those weren't followed, because like this has all been litigated, right? The reason that those weren't followed is because there's discretion that you give the executive in times of emergency, right? So we were during a global health emergency. There's more discretion that you give to the executive in those cases.
No, 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 I understand that, but I'm just pointing out that those it did not follow the Constitution, but it was okay.
Sure, but that's kind of the problem, right? Is that we have all of these like kind of tacit, oh, there's this case here with like 200 ballots. Oh, there's this case here where there was some procedural thing that didn't get followed. A lot of these cases never got like a full judicial hearing. A lot of them were dismissed on standing because they couldn't prove standing, which I think speaks to the poorness of these claims, right? But these are really, really fundamentally different than the ones that Donald Trump were spreading in order to justify the electors, right? Donald Trump wasn't saying that, oh, there was a procedural thing, right? He was saying that Ruby Freeman was pulling out boxes and boxes and boxes of fraudulent ballots and were scanning them, and then Rudy Giuliani gets sued for defamation after making that claim, and he claims that he did lie, but it was his First Amendment too, right? Or like the claims about Dominion voting machines being connected up to the Maduro regime in favor of Venezuela to steal votes, right? And then Fox News gets sued for letting Sidney Powell come on and make those kind of claims for the biggest settlement in U.S. civil litigation
Yeah,
history,
eight
right?
hundred
So like
$78 million or something like that.
these are the kind of cases that we saw Donald Trump making, right? And these are the kind of cases that he was using to justify stealing the election back, right? I would still say that we see no real evidence that even calls the election into question, especially since this is also, I'm pretty sure, the most litigated election in American history, right? There's the most
You are
lawsuits, the
probably
most
right.
audits, the most recounts going on. And Donald Trump even commissioned a lot of those audits. They came back and said, hey, Joe Biden won, sometimes in larger margins than they even thought. And Donald Trump says, okay, I'm going to try and do the electors anyway, right? Have you ever heard about the Jeffrey Clark, Jeffrey Rosen stuff?
Go ahead on it.
It's crazy. All right, so the acting attorney general for Donald Trump at the time was Jeffrey Rosen, right? And his deputy was Richard
It's
Donahue.
Rosenberg, right? Or
No, just Jeffrey Rosen, and then
okay.
his deputy was Donahue. And the reason that he was the acting attorney general was because Bill Barr had already resigned because Donald Trump was coming to him every day with different claims of fraud that he had to disprove, right? So Bill Barr resigns. Rosen becomes the acting attorney general. He goes to Rosen with these same claims of fraud, but this time he also comes with this letter that this guy named Jeffrey Clark wrote, and he was like, "Hey, I need you to send this letter claiming there's like giant anomalies the DOJ had found in Georgia to the Georgia state legislature, so they decertified their electors." And the attorney general, Jeffrey Rosen, said, hey, first of all, you got this from one of our employees that you're not supposed to be talking to, right? You're not supposed to be talking to these low level, know nothing environmental civil lawyers about federal matters. You're not supposed to be doing that. So that's inappropriate. But on top of that, we haven't found anything to substantiate the idea that there's massive fraud to change the results of Georgia's election. And then he says, okay. He takes that letter to him a couple more times, and he also takes it to Donahue, who tells him the same thing. And there's a famous quote from the J6 committee where Donahue told Trump, or Trump told Donahue, just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman. That's the famous quote that came out of that. But he basically goes to the attorney general and the deputy attorney general multiple times saying like, hey, can you tell Georgia their election was stolen? And they say, no, the DOJ hasn't found any evidence. And then what he does, he tries to fire Rosen and replace him with the guy who wrote the letter, Jeffrey Clark, so he would send the letter. The only reason that didn't end up happening is because once the DOJ, civil servants caught wind of it, there was a threat of a mass exodus of DOJ litigators if they ended up going through with it. So it's like crazy shit like that. And in the midst of that, he was telling Mike Pence in order to get him to go through with the electors plot, like, hey, the DOJ is finding some crazy shit. Even though, the attorney general, the deputy attorney general had told him that we actually haven't found anything like that. So he's just like lying to different people in the federal government and trying to force the DOJ to lie for him to the states. Like, that's insane. That's insane.
I look at all of that stuff, and if my power is running out, I would be looking at every single avenue to see where we could find a way to disqualify votes.
But that's
And
not good faith though. Like he's lying to do it, right? Like that's an attempt to steal an election, right? Like that's not just like, oh, I'm taking my legal routes, I'm filing my lawsuits. That's I'm trying to use the DOJ as an arm of me to lie to the states for me. Right? Like and especially considering like the giant, departure from morals that we saw, like George Washington willingly stepping down after his second term because he thought it'd be too corrupt, or Al Gore willingly ceding the election that there was way more justification for in 2000, right? Like when we see that kind of precedent, and then Donald Trump legitimately loses an election and then he tries to steal it, I don't feel like it's reasonable to say like, oh, if I was in his shoes, I would be doing the same thing. There's a reason you're not in his shoes. Like, he's the president, right? There's a level of like moralness that we expect out of the president. Donald Trump is the opposite of it.
well, I understand what you mean with the. Oh man, he's back on the front side of this other house. Son of a bitch. I really feel like he literally knows what I'm doing, and he's just walking around
Trying to
mowing
get in your
grass with the weed eater. Uh, like I don't agree with what the things he did, but I am willing to admit that there were enough anomalies that it did warrant something to look at. I mean, if you just look at the big four: Philadelphia, Atlanta, Detroit, and Tucson? No, Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
The weird stuff that happened in those specific places that was not replicated
But it's
in
only
the following or prior elections is strange.
It's only weird if you know none of the context surrounding it. If you're just looking at a number out of context, that's why Donald Trump is supposed to be going to these experts, paying for people to investigate the election. That's why you file these lawsuits in order to contest the election. That's why you go to your attorney general, ask about like certain things that are weird and concerning. But Donald Trump didn't have like all of these things are fairly easily explainable because there was unprecedented access to mail-in ballots. Those are obviously going to come in during overtime. So the surging numbers at night, those are completely explainable, or like all of these cases getting dismissed is completely explainable. Like all of these so-called anomalies are very, very easily understandable and explainable if you have any amount of contextualization for these stats, which Donald Trump had at the time, but he came out and made these claims anyway, right? Like, and he admitted to it. Like the claims that he was spreading about Ruby Freeman with that box of the poll worker pulling the box up from underneath the table and counting the ballots. They admitted to lying about that, knowingly lying about it.
Is it lying when you can look at the video? All of the election.
Yes, it is. They admitted. Wait, no. They admitted in court. Wait, hold on. You asked if it's lying. I just want to be hyper clear. They admitted it in court that it was lying.
Okay, so they could admit in court, but when you initially see that video of them literally pulling boxes out from underneath tables, counting them, taking the same stack of ballots and putting it back through the machine the same time, you can't say that's weird. And then there's other things.
If you saw the whole video, you would know it's not weird because you also see them take the ballots from next to the machine and put them right where they were, right? Like there's nothing, if you watch the whole video, there's nothing suspicious about it. It's suspicious if you maliciously chop it up and present it to a state legislator in a malicious way to lie about it, but that's what Rudy Giuliani did.
There's other things, specifically in Georgia and Philadelphia, but I'll stay with just Georgia because I know more about it from family being there. In that situation, they had sent the poll workers home, poll watchers that are supposed to be there by law.
It was all on video.
It does video. Okay. So video, sleight of hand doesn't matter. Sleight of hand can occur on video, right?
Sleight of hand can occur with poll watchers too.
Okay, and I understand that, but the law said we're supposed to have poll watchers here while you count votes.
Yeah, they were dismissed because there was a pipe break, right? Or there was like some sort of safety thing that they had to.
A toilet overflowed, and
but that wasn't while people were counting. By the way, that wasn't while people were voting. That's while the votes were being counted, right? So
yes,
nobody.
Night.
So what? I mean, like we have the people voting the ballots on or counting the ballots on video. There's nothing malicious there.
But the poll watchers were not there to watch that stuff. That violates the state law.
Cameras were. The cameras were. The cameras. And also, they were only gone for an hour.
No, they were gone for longer than that. They counted for greater than 90 minutes.
No, I don't believe that's true.
You should really do some due diligence into that part.
I have
That
done plenty of due
after
diligence, I promise you.
you should do due diligence into that, and then you also need to look into the adjudication process, right? So in Georgia, they if a bubble's not filled in correctly,
Mm-hmm.
the person counting the vote on the machine is
Mm-hmm.
allowed to adjudicate at the person's will. You can click and select any vote you want. It's been shown.
No,
It,
the
it, it,
electronic
it
adjudication thing, those weren't even installed in Georgia.
yes, they were.
No, they
Yes, they were.
weren't. They weren't.
Yes,
They literally were not.
Coleman County. Yes, that is
No, they
one
weren't.
county.
Those electronic adjudication machines were not installed. It's not true.
It's been shown. It was sent to the Georgia State Legislature. It was brought up, and the people who showed the information originally were allowed to testify
The
and
people
bring
who
their
showed
data
that
to show it.
information initially were working on behalf of the Trump administration, and they were lying. That's the problem.
They
They were
weren't
coming
lying.
up and they were lying to the people. Yes, they were. They were making false claims about how many dead people voted that were not substantiated
No,
by
I'm not
anybody.
talking about dead people. I'm just talking about the
Within all of
adjudication
these claims,
process, sir.
they admitted to lying about all of this. Like we
No,
have provable. Those machines were not installed.
Those machines were installed in specific counties because Georgia is a state where not every single voting machine was Dominion, Symantec,
Do you also
or
do you also
SmartTech.
acknowledge that with the electronic adjudication, we have the paper trail for all of it?
Yes, you do. But
Okay,
there are
so
other,
all of that would
but
be taken into account by audits as well.
because no, that's not how they did the audit. That's not how they did the hand count audits. The hand count audits only went through and counted the votes on the paper that was printed.
The hand count audits are different than there's a difference between auditing something and hand counting something. Those were
And
two
there
like
were
there were full scale investigations into all of this. The state
in the,
investigators found nothing.
yes, in Fulton, I know they didn't find anything because in Fulton County specifically, when they went to do their hand count audit, the two of them, both times they got different results.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure there's a margin of error. Yeah.
Yes. And then also, if you go to Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court said
Wait,
you can't do. Go ahead.
did those two hand count audits find any shot in hell that Donald Trump won that election?
It was no more than 275 votes between the two counts.
What was their margin of error? How different was the two results?
I'm going to say, ooh, nope, I've done something. Okay. What was the two different results between the hand count audits?
Yeah, what was the margin of error there? Because if it
thing I
fluctuated between
know-
like two votes, right, then that doesn't get him any closer to winning that county.
The only thing I can say in regards to that is that the two hand count audits, the only difference was there was basically a loss of somewhere between 275 and 600 votes changed away from Biden. Not just for Biden, not just for Trump, but switched away. Like Trump lost like 13 votes.
Oh wait, so
or
you're
7
saying wait, how many votes was the election contested by?
in that state, I believe it was less than like 7,000 total.
Okay, so you're saying that Biden lost 200 votes after those two hand count audits.
Yes, and there's something
Okay,
like
where's
100.
the rest of the 6,000, right? Like that
Okay,
doesn't get him anywhere close to winning.
Okay, and I understand that, and I can agree to that. But if those audits
So this
were
doesn't
done at that
justify
level,
him trying to steal the election. That's the problem.
okay, does the stuff that occurred in Pennsylvania, as far as their Supreme Court not allowing for signature verification, or sorry, that's Arizona that didn't allow the signature verification.
You'd have to cite me a specific case. Because I truly just cannot trust any characterization that anybody gives me of these things. I need to read it
in
myself.
in Maricopa County, there was it's not the Vote Project or the Citizens Vote Project brought lawsuit against the state because they were not, the Supreme Court had sided with whatever injunction to allow for no signature verification on mail-in ballots.
So what I'm seeing here is that, again, they didn't have standing. They didn't have any reason to believe that anything was contestable. So they didn't have standing to actually bring any of the cases.
I understand. Like I said,
and that
most of the cases got dismissed
subsequent
on that stuff.
audits ended up confirming it.
Okay, and the audits can confirm it all they want. Trump didn't win.
Exactly. So
I'm
what's
just
the
saying, like,
justification here? Donald Trump tried to steal the election, and we're bringing up a bunch of shit that makes sense that the states
well, and
did.
but the states also went out of their way. Pennsylvania specifically extended the acceptance deadline for mail-in ballots by
They
a full week.
did they
Like,
extend? Wait, hold on. This is a really important question. Did they extend the acceptance for ballots that were postmarked by election day, or did they extend the
no,
acceptance period
they allowed them all the way up to something like 7 days after the election.
postmarked for that?
No, 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 no. 7 day postmarked 7 days after the election. Yes,
Okay, where's this?
would have been in Pennsylvania. Was a Supreme Court case where the Supreme Court stepped in as some kind of injunction. Just Pennsylvania Supreme Court signature verification injunction.
Oh my god. Wait, okay. Okay. I feel like I'm going crazy. No, so it is the postmark thing. That's what this was. It said that
Okay,
they
but
could
how far
continue
after?
counting. They said they can continue counting ballots if they were postmarked by election day.
Okay. I
Okay,
believe
so
that there was more to that case on
why
that
did you
one, but
call me out for not doing due diligence?
no, no, I
Like
didn't say anything
I
about your
just
due diligence. You've been doing my due diligence for me, and you've been very, very, you've been very gracious with how, or I'm very gracious to you for willing to talk to me and do the research. Considering I'm sitting
Mhm.
on my front porch smoking a cigarette and drinking a beer,
Okay.
so. And your discussion has been nothing but educational or
Mhm.
equal with me. Like, you've made excellent points and given me things that I didn't know about that I'm literally, once I decide to go inside, I'm gonna actually do lookups on.
Sure. So okay, so the reason that I know about this, right, is because I started the only reason I'm really into politics right now is because I view Donald Trump as like this crazy out of third field like crazy candidate. I can't comprehend the fact that somebody would vote for him, right? And especially after reading and going through all of the prosecution of the 2020 stuff, all of the bullshit claims that he made, all of the terrible characterizations that his Trump supporters or yeah, the supporters of Trump give of like election fraud cases that were actually incredibly understandable and you know already litigated. I just I can't I I wrote like a giant. This is probably about like 50,000 words, right? On all like a summary of all of the prosecution stuff from January 6th, right? So I've done so much looking into this, right? I just can't understand how somebody would vote for him after he knowingly lied to the people about election fraud, how he fired all of the people who were telling him the election wasn't stolen to replace them with crackpot lawyers, how the legal theory that they were pushing to Mike Pence is literally to break the ECA so that Mike Pence would count Donald Trump's fraudulent electors instead of the state certified electors, or like I really can't comprehend how Americans feel so comfortable voting for somebody who wanted the vice president to choose the winner of the election.
I'm happy that Mike Pence didn't do that, because we wouldn't have got the compare and contrast between what the Democrats have to offer and what the Trump
I, I
administration has to offer.
I'm happy Mike Pence didn't do that because that would be the end of American democracy. Like
I agree.
our democratic system would be over if that happened. Like the plot was literally to throw out electoral college votes.
And I believe that there were not plots. God dang it! Now we're roof blowing. I believe that I believe you're right, and thank God it didn't happen, because now we're going to quit leaf blowing to wave at people and walk out. Now we're stopping.
I didn't hear that. I'm so sorry.
He's almost around the house. He's going to break the corner in just a second, I hope.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, maybe that's better. Now I've stepped in so I can watch
Much
him leaf
better.
blow.
Much better.
Okay. I understand that those things happen, but there have been other things that have come up throughout the history of our nation, and more specifically in 2004 and 2016. 2004 specifically, the Democrats tried to renege on the election by stating that there was unfair or incorrect ballots that were being cast or voter suppression and this and that. And then in 2016, the same thing happened in the state house. The only difference between the two instances, or the three instances,
Hmm.
bringing 2020 into this, is the fact that uh, there was a riot outside the Capitol that broke into it because they were dumb fucks.
No, I don't agree that that's the difference. I think the difference was the support by the president. So I know generally what you're talking about in regard to Hillary Clinton. I think she did take measures to contest the election, but that's not the problem. Like I said,
She
if it was just lawsuits and it was just like procedural stuff, I don't care. The problem is that Donald Trump was asking the vice president to break the federal law to
he picked
instate
a
him
good
as the
vice
president.
president. It
Yeah.
might be a little rough this time.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be really rough this time because the like one of the only reasons he picked JD Vance is because he said he would succeed where Mike Pence failed. So, like, I don't know,
Well,
like the comparison in 2004 and the comparison in 2016. What illegal activity did the Democrats do?
so the Democrats are really good at keeping a degree away from a situation, but there were many politicians, cultural figures, uh, educational figures who are petitioning and pushing for people to change their vote from Donald Trump to Hillary Clinton because we need a president like that. It's to the point that there were lawsuits brought in certain states where
Hmm. The
Bernie
faithless
Sanders,
electors. Yeah,
yeah, yep, there were
I'm
lawsuits
aware of the
brought from that.
faithless electors. None of this had any direction from Hillary Clinton, and I'm pretty sure the only support that it had didn't it only have like a handful of senators on
I
board with
believe it
it.
was three.
They couldn't even get House members to coincide with their objections.
No, I agree. But what I'm talking about is
So it's not, but
the
it can't
electoral
be
college
compared then.
electors who changed their vote.
It can't be compared then though. Like there was no
Okay,
direction from the president. There was no like widespread Democratic support. It was three Congress people. Whereas in 2020 we had support from Donald Trump, we had support from his crackpot lawyers, and we had a fuck ton of Republicans signed on to help him go through with this.
no, what I was
And
talking
now
about
Donald
was the
Trump,
electoral college voters.
the electoral the electors.
Yes, the electors. Three of them changed their vote, and
That's
it
fine.
was
That's
after
bad. There was
massive
no
campaigns.
direction to do it. That's the difference. Is that
But
I think that shines a bad light on those electors, but it doesn't shine nearly the same bad light as on the president of the United States right now that the people helped vote in,
fair
pressuring
enough.
the vice president to not only call for faithless electors, but to unilaterally take a certificate of ascertainment and throw it in the garbage and have him choose Donald Trump's certificate.
No, that's fair. You are completely fair. That is correct.
Okay, so it's not comparable. That's the problem. Is that there's not
Oh,
any comparison to what Donald Trump did, except
but
for in what was it like the fucking 1860? Was it? Was it that?
no, you're talking like 1874 or something like that,
Yeah, the
where
reason
the
that the
Rutherford
Electoral Count Act was passed. Yeah,
the Rutherford B. Hayes one, where they sat down and they said, "That's the last time we're doing it. This is the only time you're going to get it. You get a Republican as the president, you get a Democrat as vice president. Now fix it." I think
And
that's what that
that's
was.
the reason why the Electoral Count Act, the law that Donald Trump was trying to break, was passed. Right. So
Okay.
other than that, and like some people draw like a spurious line to 1960 that I think is bullshit. But like other than that election, there's no historical analog to this. That's the problem.
You are correct. And other, if January 6th happened, do you think that that would be as big a point as it what is nowadays compared to say 1960?
What do you mean?
If we didn't have the electoral vote in the joint session of Congress interrupted, do you think that the electoral swath would have been swapped under the table and probably nothing would have came from it?
Um, I don't know.
The
I don't know if I can speculate on that. Like
No, okay, that's cool.
the riot was part of the plan, right? So it's like it's kind of hard to say that
I don't
like
think the
without
riot
that.
was a part of the plan. I think the riot was uh, overzealous dumbasses getting into it, and it's just the same way as the riots or the looting or whatever you want to call it that occurred during BLM. There's a small fraction of the people who attended this were the ones. What was it? Less than 1,200 people, and there was something they estimated it was between 5 and 8,000 on the Capitol grounds that day.
Sure. I'm to be clear, I'm agnostic on whether or not Donald Trump was trying to incite the riot, right? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that Donald Trump was knew that the protest itself, if it wasn't a riot, that there was a protest outside of the chambers meant to pressure Mike Pence to stop the steal, right? He sent people to the
Correct.
Capitol.
Or
So
maybe not
that
that
part,
far,
that part,
but
and well, no, he did. He said we will march onto the Capitol ground. He didn't say, he also said
peacefully
peacefully
and
and
patriotically
patriotically, right?
protest,
But I'm
and I'll be
saying,
there with you.
but the protest itself was a pressure mechanism that was intended, right? And then once it got violent, the Trump administration was incredibly willing to use the violence as leverage. There's a reason why Rudy Giuliani was making calls to people like Tommy Tuberville, right, to decertify the electors while there were people in the Capitol, right? There's a reason that Donald Trump sent out that tweet saying Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what was necessary to save the country while people were in the Capitol looking to hang him, right? Like, even if they didn't intend for it to be violent, they were absolutely using that violence to continue to pressure the people in power.
Okay, just to move off of this because you are a formidable opponent and you've really opened my eyes to look at stuff, and you don't get this very often in TikTok. Somebody that's willing to sit here and
I
actually
agree.
have a discussion and educate people.
Mhm.
Um, what? How do you feel about Trump and his tariffs? Trump and his economic policy? Do you feel like he's hurting the economy?
If I'm being honest, I don't think I'm in a position of authority to make a whole ton of calls. Like, I don't think the tariffs make intuitive sense. Like, my general outline of econ, I can't really tell. I do know that, like, so for example, in 2016 when he put the tariffs on China, I know that those weren't very good at bringing manufacturing back. And I know that whenever Donald Trump was making justification to the voters about these tariffs, he was using like contradictory uh, things to justify it. So he was saying that it would raise federal income while bringing jobs back, while being used for negotiation with other countries. I just don't think those make sense. I think that negotiating trade deals is good. I don't see the need to bring like a ton of manufacturing jobs back to the US, and I don't think that his tariffs are going to be very effective in doing it. But it's really hard. Like, his tariff plan is so amorphous and ever changing that it's really hard to make a concrete blanket statement on it because it's so amorphous and changing. Like, I can't I disagree with the tariffs on Liberation Day, but then he reneged on those and put on different ones, and now it's like impossible to tell what tariffs are in place and what tariffs aren't in place.
One of my big things is I think that the tariffs have opened the markets of other nations. Specifically, the one I will cite is Great Britain,
Mhm.
whereas we own something like 1/10% of the automotive industry there, and now we have access to where our trucks, our cars, our lorries, as they call them, are not going to be artificially or have their prices artificially inflated.
Mhm.
They went from having something like a 28 to 29% tariff on us,
Mhm.
and now it's down to like 5%. And then they let us put a 12% tariff on their goods that come here, as well as opening their market to us. And I think
Yeah.
that's something he's done. That's something he's done with Japan. That's something he's done with South Korea. And in return, Japan and South Korea have turned around and they are going to open. Yes,
Mhm.
there's an EV mandate that Biden did, and it's a great thing that he pushed in to help get this stuff made here in America because
Mhm.
that's a good thing. And I can stop and say when Biden did something good.
Yep.
The EV mandate to Made in America is a huge thing because they opened
Mhm.
up a factory in or not either they're building or they committed to a factory. Hyundai did
Yep.
specifically in Georgia for EV batteries,
Mhm.
and there's other things like in my area we have IS and Seki, which is a subsidiary. They build the parts for GM, Toyota. They're a Toyota owned company wholly, but they build the parts for like Subaru. Other cars that are manufacturing just in my area alone, they've opened up 800 jobs
Mhm.
additional to up the count of what they're producing. They've planned to expand the plant. They went from 4 buildings, now they're talking about 2 additional buildings to bring stuff up in our area. And these were things that were not happening under the Biden administration. I really felt like the
Kind of.
Biden. Okay.
So I guess so the first thing is that it's kind of hard to do a direct comparison between Biden and Trump because um Biden was basically tasked with recovering from COVID, and that's about it. And anything else was kind of a cherry on top, right? Whereas Donald Trump doesn't have that same kind of excuse in this term. So it's kind of hard to do direct one-to-one comparisons with Trump and Biden. One, because Biden's numbers are super inflated because he had a lot of rebound numbers, and Trump is working off of those rebound numbers, right? So he's working off of a baseline that Biden wasn't at. So it's really, really hard to kind of like, if we're using like job creation or like domestic investment. I imagine that domestic investment around 2020 to 2022 was super, super low, but that's because nobody wants to, everything's super unstable. The economy is super unstable on a global scale. So I can't imagine that anybody's going to want to be doing like these super risky, expensive, project in the US, right? So that's the first part. And the second part is the strategy with Trump's tariffs right now is like, obviously it's going to result in some decent things, because this is the way that I characterize his negotiation style, right? Is he'll go in, he'll say, hey, listen, if you don't give me everything I want, I'm going to kill myself and you, right? I'm just going to blow myself up. All right. He's kind of like a trade jihadist, right? So obviously that's going to work sometimes, right? He's going to come in and Japan's not going to want to go to trade war with the United States. So they'll just settle for decent terms, right? But that's also souring our tie. And I think that's a really, really bad thing too. I feel like the United States has a deserved place as like the world superpower. I don't think we should get rid of it.
I don't think we're getting rid of it. I think that a lot of the tariffs that were in place prior to Trump are still WW2 era stuff, like the
Mm-hmm.
European Recovery Act, the Marshall Plan, that kind of stuff, where we said, yeah, tariff the shit out of us so you can get your stuff back.
Mm-hmm.
And then just like taxes, none of those tariffs went away.
Sure, but
Not
I think
none,
I
but
think
a
there was a
majority.
way to bring those tariffs down. Like you're the United States; they're going to come and negotiate with you, right? I don't think you need to do it by saying, "Hey, if you don't bring these tariffs down, I'm going to 200% tariff and kill us both."
Well, that's
I
what
don't.
he's
I don't
doing
think
to
that's what
China
you
now.
need to do. I don't think that's what you need. Well, China's a different thing because we're already enemies. So souring the tie to China is a little different. But like those Day tariffs, where we saw like 15% on everybody, and like this fake definition of like reciprocal, right? Um, those are like completely unnecessarily antagonistic to all of our allies, and I just don't understand. Like there's so many different ways that we could have gone about that in a much more peaceful way. I don't know why we decided to choose like the absolute most aggressive thing that we could possibly do, um in order to achieve trade deals. When we're the United States, they will come to negotiate with us. I know for a fact they will.
I agree with you. You are correct that yes, we are the United States, and they're going to come to discuss trade with us. But
Hmm.
at the same time, a lot of those countries, like Canada, has the weird tariffs where once it reaches a mark,
Yeah.
or a certain level,
Hmm.
then we drop our tariffs, and like those aren't fair because we don't have a mark. Well, maybe we do. I'm not completely knowledgeable of every tariff we have with
Yeah,
Canada,
I'm not
but
either, but I mean, like I think so. My ideal is, I'm not even saying there's a world where you can't do these kind of tariffs. I'm just saying, why was this the first option? You know, and on top of that, I mean, like, we didn't need to do blanket tariffs. Donald Trump was not ready to negotiate blanket tariffs, and there's a
I
reason
think
that
I
the stock market crashed immediately after he did it, and he reneged on all of them. There was
well, I don't
no
think it
need
was
for that.
I don't think it was a renege. I think it was kind of like a I don't know if you've ever been through a divorce and had to deal with not adjudication. What's the word? Mediation.
Hmm.
So in there, my ex can say I want A, B, C, and I can say, well, I'll give up A, but I want D, E, and C can go to her.
Sure.
I think that sometimes because if you just give in on a
Hmm.
lot of them, you're not going to do anything to benefit the country. I think that
The
uh,
difference is, though, is that it's like you're mediating between like 200 different marriages you had, and you're just saying like, fuck it, I'm giving you nothing. All of you are getting nothing, and then you just have to like divide yourself between the 200 people to negotiate that the whole time. Whereas like, why wouldn't you just like kind of, okay, make a single file line where we'll negotiate trade with you. If I don't like it, I'll put tariffs on, and then I'll negotiate with the next person. I'll put tariffs on. But for some reason, he decided to put 15% blanket plus reciprocal on everybody all at once. I think there's just no reason to do that. I see no reason
well,
to do that.
but post Liberation Day, didn't we see something like $8 or $9 trillion in proposed spending by companies that were in those nations so
It's
that they
hard
would
to
avoid the tariffs?
it's hard to attribute, but I mean, the Liberation Day tariffs were only in place for like what, like a week. All right. We also saw like giant amounts of uncertainty in the markets, right? So we saw like a giant crash, right? And we saw a bunch of people long term. It's really tough to, I don't know if we could draw a one-to-one line like these tariffs happen so immediately. Like I don't think that's how investments in America work. I don't think they move like that quickly, right? So there was probably already a bunch of planned investments in the United States. I don't know how many got canceled either. It's a really hard metric to actually navigate through. But these were already probably allocated, right? Because, like you said, Joe Biden also gave a lot of incentives for people to domestically manufacture, right?
Yes, he did. He what was it, Made in America Act or something like that, or was it
There was a
part
bunch
of
of them.
the
I know the Chips
Inflation
Act was part
Reduction?
of it. The Inflation Reduction Act was part of it.
Yeah, but
Um,
the sad thing about the Chips Act is that it was specifically targeted Intel and Intel only.
sure, yeah, and I could agree with
Well,
that. But
maybe not only.
regardless, though, like Biden gave a lot of incentives to domestically manufacture as well. So I don't know if we can draw like I don't think those kind of investments work so quickly. Whereas like a tariff gets put on and then the next week they make an investment. I don't think
Y-
that's I
You're
don't think
correct.
that's
They're
how those
4 to
move.
10 years out.
Yeah, they're like giant moves, right? So I don't think we can make a tie between Trump's tariffs and Trump's investments right now. If anything, I would probably give that credit to Biden, but we also saw like immediate confidence shakes with like a lot of corporate America and what Donald Trump did, right? And the only reason why the stock market like half recovered, I think it's still in a not great of a spot, but I'm not certain. But the only reason that I think it recovered was because Donald Trump reneged on a lot of the tariffs and tried to put confidence back into our markets, right? So
But he also got tariff deals in that showed that it was working.
for certain places, yeah, sure. Which he hasn't. And there's a nitpick there too, where like he hasn't fully negotiated a deal. He has a lot of skeletons with of deals with people, right? But you could have done that without the blanket. That's the problem. Is that I just don't see the need for this blanket 15% plus reciprocals. I think that was
So
incredibly antagonistic.
I'm a former business owner, and I lost my business due to C-19.
Hmm.
And I will tell you that I had contractors under me,
Yep.
and they would come at me and they'd give me ballooned numbers. And
Hmm.
because I had done, prior to opening my own business, I had done the work where I knew what went into building a house, reconstruction, stuff like that.
Yep.
And I could go on job sites, write my own estimate, and turn around.
Hmm.
So when these guys I knew that there were a couple who were buddies. They drank together. They painters, drywallers. They kind of
Hmm.
intermingle with each other.
Yeah.
They would artificially increase their rates on my jobs, and I only found that out because one of the guys, one of the guys that I recruited through Indeed, came to work for me, and he told me, he was like, "Yeah, every time they tell you, when you say it's a $4,200 job, they mark it up and say it's a $6,500 job, so they can get their
Hmm.
stuff." Well, then I started getting on them. Well, I made a blanket thing where I brought all of them in, and I talked to the 8 or 9 of them that I had at the time and
Hmm.
their different trades that they were specific in. And I said, you guys can mark your stuff up 8%.
Hmm.
Because you're marking it up 8%, I'm going to go to 3%. That gives me the 11% window for materials, labor, and homeowners
Hmm.
that I can get through with. Sometimes a blanket works to get people to the table, because there were people who came to me afterward and said, "Hey, man, can we do 5 and 5?" And then that way we can keep them coming back for business. And when I leave, I get to leave my business card, and they call me for all their drywall needs or their painting needs or
Hmm.
whatever. And I was able to get deals on an individual basis.
Sure, but I mean, I would probably say that there's a lot of minutia that comes with different leaders of countries doing it, and different individual people, right? So like when you do that, you don't have as much kickback whenever you make a blanket like that as if a country does to their people, right? Like trade is an incredibly important thing to a lot of populations, so there's
Correct.
going to be a lot more kickback to these tariffs than there would be with your with marking up example, right? And
My profit margin.
the second thing is I think that like I think regardless, like do you disagree that like these kind of blanket tariffs towards especially our allies are like not like necessarily antagonistic?
No, because
Okay.
I think my reasoning is my allies know what me and my crews are capable of. They should be the first people to come to me and say, "Hey, we need to change things and make this more fair."
I don't see a world where that ever happens. I mean, like
I agree.
expecting that
Maybe
I think is probably
maybe that's
naive, right?
easier on maybe that's easier on an individual level,
Mm-hmm.
where I've been working with these guys 6 7 years,
Right.
and there's a difference, and a president or an administration doesn't get 6 or 7 years. They get maybe five, because
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
they're dealing with 2 or 3 years of the previous people and
Yep.
changing what they think was wrong, and then you get to a year of trying to prevent the next people from coming in
Mm-hmm.
from messing up what you've done.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, I probably agree with that. Um. Okay.
Is
Um.
there? Do you have any questions for me? I'll try to answer them the best of my ability.
No, I mean, I feel like I wear my intentions on my sleeve, right? Like I'm a very constitutional guy, like I'm a very law guy, right? So, all of the questions I would have are like really, really long sussing outs of plots, right? Because, like you said, politicians obstruct whatever they do, illegal shit, right? So, I mean, obviously, like any other question I would have, we would be here for like another 2 hours, which I don't have the time for.
Okay, I
Um,
get that. But if you have one that we could do, because I'm similar. I'm running out of time. My kids are going to be getting home from school soon.
sure. I mean, okay. I guess the what I feel like we're seeing a lot of needlessly inflammatory rhetoric from the Trump administration, right? We're
Hmm.
seeing a lot of them talking about how the Democrats are the enemy from within, right? We see um, the threats from Pam Bondi to crack down on hate speech, right? We're seeing the designation of
Oh my god.
Antifa as a terrorist organization. Um, I feel like we're at a point right now where like the president needs to come out and calm shit down, and that's what Biden tried to do. You know, he came out and said that, you know, I'm not the left's president, I'm America's president, stuff like that. He made a couple things as call out to like the MAGA Republicans, but even that was hedging, right? He didn't say Republicans, he said MAGA Republicans, right? He's talking about Trump supporters. Um, I feel like when Trump comes out and he says that, like, you know, I don't. There's a lot of quotes from the this recent campaign that a lot of people don't remember, and it's crazy about how he was talking about the deportations would be like one really rough hour, you know, and that how people would get the word immediately and then crime was going to plummet. That's crazy to me, right? Or saying that like Joe Biden has blood on his hands from the innocent victims, right? That's crazy. Or him like making fun of Paul Pelosi's attack, saying maybe he should have had bigger walls. Like, there's so much. Like, would you say that that the president just needs to calm the fuck down, that he needs to stop inflaming the rhetoric so hard, inflaming the country so hard, and dividing the two parties as hard as he does?
I would agree if similar rhetoric wasn't coming from the left.
That's the problem. Okay, I don't. So, okay, when you say the left, who are you talking about, right? Because when I see
So
similar rhetoric coming out of the left, I see Maxine Waters, who I think does need to be excised from the party, right? But other than that, I see like Twitter accounts,
Hakeem,
right?
I can go through just in politicians. Hakeem Jeffries, AOC, Chuck Schumer,
So like
his rhetoric.
what did AOC or Hakeem Jeffries say that was similar to Donald Trump making fun of like Paul Pelosi's skull getting fractured? Like, or saying that like the
Mm.
maybe the Second Amendment people could do something about Hillary Clinton, right? Like I can't think of anything. Or like he even said, sorry to take it back to J6, right? He said that when he was asked like, "Hey, how do you feel about the fact that so many of your supporters were going into the Capitol and chanting to hang your vice president?" He said, "Well, they were very angry." Like, I can't think of comparable rhetoric on the left to that at all, even close.
So during 2020, do you remember the funds that were started for the Minneapolis rioters?
Yeah.
Okay, there were do because I can't say that because January 6th happened, and I believe that Trump adjacent people beg for people to help support those people for their law cases.
Well, I mean, not only that, Donald Trump pardoned all of them.
He pardoned them after the fact, but I don't. I think he was wrong. I'll 100% tell you that he was wrong in the way he went about that. Now the after the initial violence, the breaching of the Capitol,
Mm-hmm.
those 300 to 700 people,
Mm-hmm.
the people who walked around and had um, security escorts by Capitol Police and sergeant at arms and stuff like that. Those people didn't take anything. Some of them, not all of them, some of them didn't take anything. They didn't break anything. They just did their thing and walked around, looked at stuff, and they
I mean,
got put away.
they were in restricted grounds though, right? Like this was absolutely trespassing at the very least. Like all of
Well,
the area around the Capitol was restricted ground.
correct. You are correct. But there were things that happened that were just not right. And so, do we punish those officers as well? Should those officers have been punished for
No, because
allowing them in?
I don't think those officers were. So the reason that the officers were leading people through the Capitol is because they were trying to lead them away from the quarantine areas where all the Congress people were.
You
So
you
like,
might be correct in that, but there were some people who did get to go on basically a congressional tour, walking through the halls.
well, that's what that was, right? They were leading them to the already secured areas where they knew none of the Congress people were. That's all
Okay,
those guided tours were. So no, I wouldn't say. I would say yes, it's a problem that these people were entering the restricted zones, but it's not a problem for them to take them to more safe restricted zones so they don't get to where all of the Congress people are hiding.
what about the officers that broke the initial barricades that were around the Capitol?
The officers that so it's not my impression that the officers did break the initial barricades. I
There
think
were
they were already broken by a previous wave of rioters by the time that the police officers took the barricade down and tried to move back to a more defensible position.
Do you happen to watch wrestling at all? Because that's
I
the only way I
love
can describe
wrestling.
the ring.
I love
Okay.
wrestling. Yes.
Do you remember how ECW used to have the old bar and rail style
Yep.
wrapping around the ring?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a video, and you can eventually find it. You could probably search Capitol Police let people through barricade.
Yep.
And there's a barricade where somebody leans forward, talks to the officer,
Mm-hmm.
and then the officer behind the barricade lifts the gate and opens it and
Yeah.
allows them to
So
go in.
I know what video you're talking about. I'm
Okay.
like 90% sure the reason that happened was because and this isn't encapsulated in the video, right? There were already people past that barricade. So that
Okay, you could be
barricade wasn't
correct.
worth defending anymore because they had that restricted area had already been breached. So there's no point in defending that barricade anymore. They had to move back
Okay.
to more defensible position.
And then once the law enforcement retook the initial area, how
Mhm.
do you feel about those law enforcement officers launching paintballs or crowd suppressant agents into those people
I
that were
would
pushed
I would
back already?
I would have to see because again, like there was a lot of more restricted area than just the building, right? So I would have to see what specifically the retreat from the mob looked like. I don't know for sure what it looked like after the Rose Garden video where Trump told them to leave. I just know generally that the National Guard came in, they left, and that's it. I don't know what specifically the retreatment looked like, but I'm going to give fairly wide deference to the Capitol Police officers because they were quelling an insurrection, right? So,
Okay,
um,
I can agree with that. That's fair. Can I ask you a question about Nancy Pelosi and her role as Speaker of the House?
yeah, probably.
Okay. Is it true that she denied the need for National Guard troops on January 6th?
Yeah, so the a couple days before, Donald Trump made an offer to, deploy a bunch of National Guard people to the Capitol.
25K.
Yeah, and she said it was her, and I think it was the mayor of
Sergeant
DC,
at
or
Arms.
there
Yep.
was a couple people that denied it,
Yep.
right?
You're
And they
you're on the same
said,
thing.
yeah, and they said, one, it was because we don't want America to look like a military dictatorship, right? We don't want to give the impression that like all of these people here are going to be quelled by the military. That's not
Hmm.
it was like an optic concern, right? And the other thing is that they just didn't think it was necessary. They didn't know that there would be that big of a protest. It seems like there was probably a communication issue because it seems like the FBI did know that there was a lot of quelling or a lot of bubbling stuff happening with the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys. But like as it relates to culpability for Nancy Pelosi, it just seems like poor communication and like the want to retain like optics for the country, which probably wasn't great. But at the same time, I mean, like obviously Donald Trump has no concern with going over their heads. I mean, we're seeing that right now, right? If he thinks it's necessary, he'll send them anyway. So
So, did the Sergeant at Arms under Pelosi on the day of January 6th testify before the January 6th committee?
uh, I think so. Yeah.
And during his testimony, would you?
Oh, I can't hear you when you're out of the app.
No, the low battery thing kicked up. Sorry.
You're good.
Uh, would you allow for the testimony of the sergeant at arms to say that he told Nancy Pelosi that they needed the National Guard because of verified threats?
Wait, restate the question.
Would you grant that the sergeant at arms on January 6th testified that he informed Nancy Pelosi that there were verified threats that they needed the National Guard on that day?
Yeah, it's possible. I don't know for sure, but I mean, yeah, it's
Do
possible.
you know what his what the response was that he got that day?
No, not by name or not by quote.
What he was told, no, we don't need them.
Yeah, I'm sure she genuinely believed that they didn't need them. Yeah, I believe that.
Do you now continuing with Nancy Pelosi in this line of thought?
Mhm.
Do you remember the last time that a congressional representative brought a camera and film crew to document the day in on an inauguration?
Uh, Probably hasn't happened. Yeah.
Okay, so
Wait, hold on. On the
go ahead.
inauguration day
Or
or the
the
certification?
yeah, certification.
Okay. No. But okay, so let me hedge a little bit, all right?
Go ahead.
Because so I do think that it was understood that there was going to be. I mean, Donald Trump himself set up and his campaign set up the Stop the Steal rally, right? So I think
Yeah.
everyone knew that he would be at the ellipse and that people would be at the Capitol because of that, right? So I think that was known. So I mean, it's possible that I think that that camera crew there was on behalf of that Stopping the Steal documentary from HBO, wasn't it?
She got the deal through HBO. Yes, you are correct, but it was Pelosi's daughter.
Yeah. But okay, so my guess is that they were probably. I mean, the film crew was there for the Stop the Steal rally, right? So they were going to be there regardless
No, no,
of
no.
whether
They
or
were
not there
inside.
was.
That video crew that I'm talking about was inside, rode with Nancy after they were in her chambers,
Mhm,
with it because of the daughter. They were
mhm.
rode with them in a vehicle, and in the vehicle, as if I had known it been like this, I would have asked for the National Guard. And she's on
Yeah.
the phone with, I believe she's on the phone with the national, or not national, the
Mhm.
sergeant at arms for the House, who is saying, "I told you this is what we needed, and you didn't listen," or something to that effect.
Yeah, all of that can be completely true, and I still don't know how much blame I would put on Nancy Pelosi because I don't know if the scale was communicated well. I don't think that we knew that it would be like how many people were there? It was like hundreds of people, right? I don't know if that scale
I
was
think it
ever
was somewhere
communicated.
between three to 8,000, and they prosecuted somewhere about 12 to 1,600 in
Sure,
the
yeah.
Capitol itself.
So I mean, I can understand why Nancy Pelosi thought it would be a big enough deal because the president is leading a campaign to overturn the election, right? I could see why there was a big enough deal to have a film like a film crew there for a documentary. I can understand that. But I can also
Yeah.
understand why they didn't think it would be a big enough crowd to actually overwhelm the already established Capitol police officers and lead an insurrection, right?
Okay.
Um, so that makes sense to me. So if I could flip this question back on you, like why do you think Donald Trump waited to deploy the National Guard?
Due to the laws around it, he would have had to done what he did with the deployment recently, where he used the
Well, I mean,
home rule law.
in DC, yeah, you would, but I mean, you could. If that's as simple as signing a declaration, right?
Yes, but do you think he would have got more flack or less flack because he deployed?
I think you would have got infinitely less flack if he saw that. Because okay, the timeline of the Capitol, right?
Hmm.
Hold on. Now I
It's
have to
somewhere
actually look
between
through my document.
it's basically 1 p.m. to 4 p.m.
Yeah. Okay, give me 1 second.
You're fine.
Okay. Um. Okay. So. Okay. At 2:13, Pizzola breaks through the window. That's the first
Hmm.
entry into the Capitol. They're screaming, "Where the fuck are they counting the votes at?"
Yep.
House goes into recess at 2:18. Okay, yeah. So the first correspondence Trump has to this group, right, is the Mike Pence didn't have the courage tweet. There's no call
Correct.
for de-escalation. There's no call for standing down, right?
Correct.
The people are chanting "Hang Mike Pence." He says, "Well, the people are very angry." Donald Trump does. There's the testimony that one of the staffers at the White House came in and rushed to tell Trump that they were, evacuating Pence, and he says, "So what?"
Was that
Trump,
from the Jan 6 committee?
that was from Jack Smith's prosecution.
Okay.
The first call, he says, "Stay peaceful," right? At 2:38. So this is already 15 minutes. Or wait, hold on. This is already, like 15 to 20 minutes past when the people broke in. He's
Correct.
watching this all unfold on Fox News. About 20 minutes later, he says, "Stay peaceful," implying that they were already peaceful, but he never calls for them to go home. There's no call for them to leave, right? He sends up about the same thing about an hour later. He pre-records a video at 4, and I think it gets released at 6.
I wouldn't know because it came out here about 4:30 in the afternoon. So I'm in Illinois.
Yeah, this is all
so
EST.
Central.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it comes out at 6, and then the National Guard is deployed at 8. Or no. The National Guard declares the building is secure at 8.
So did Trump deploy the National Guard, or was that?
That was it wasn't Trump, it was Miller.
Miley?
No, it wasn't Milley. It was Christopher Miller, the acting defense secretary.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So Trump never signs for the National Guard to be deployed. His first call for them to actually go home is 2-3 hours after the invasion. I feel like if he just immediately said because he's watching this whole thing unfold, right? He sends his first tweet talking to the people at 10 minutes after they break in. What he should have obviously done is at that point say, "Hey, you guys need to go home. You guys need to leave," and then deploy the National Guard. I think that would have saved him a lot of the poor decision making. But the problem is that he was buying time, right? He was, because we know in between that 6 p.m. and that 2 p.m., right? He was calling Congress people to make sure that they still planned on decertifying the electors. He was still sending tweets out to the rioters talking about how Mike Pence has let them down. I just don't see how this is a world where we can maybe put a little bit of culpability on Nancy Pelosi because she was being naive, I guess. Donald Trump was exploiting the violence, right?
I don't know if exploiting. Do you think that those rioters were watching their phones for Trump tweets during that time?
We know for a fact that there was a person with a megaphone. I think there was one in the Capitol and one outside of the Capitol screaming out Donald Trump's tweets. So whether or not they were looking or not, they knew Donald Trump's correspondence. But yeah, I'm pretty sure. I think a lot of them were communicating between each other, the correspondence from Trump and into them, right? I mean, they're trying to do this on behalf of Trump, and right as soon as Trump calls for them to go home, they start going home.
That's fair. That's a fair assessment. So, other than I got to go ahead and go.
All right.
So, I appreciate you discussing with me. Thank you for letting me take up your time, and I hope that you continue doing these. If you ever do a wider panel, and you need somebody who'll be willing to talk and not what about and yell and scream like you see here on TikTok all the time, you're welcome to give me a tap.
All right. I love you, buddy.
Thank you, man. You have a great day.
You too. Okay. Well, I mean, I do love conversations like that because I can actually, if we could disagree, right? It's infinitely more frustrating when I can't get into any of the actual details, right?